Binghamton Now, time for the voice of the people. Michael from Binghamton, good morning.
Hey, Bob. Good to hear you today.
Well, good to hear you. What say you?
I think that it's a wonderful thing that we saw yesterday, that we saw people come out and we see this change. The vote, it's a referendum. You know, the way that people stepped out and we saw so many Republicans for the first time in how long? Decades? Since the last time we've seen the city council controlled by Republicans. We have a Republican in the mayor's office. We have the state senator, again, a brand new fresh voice in Fred on the state senate. I think it's a referendum, and it's a fantastic thing. You know me, Bob. It's Mike Vasquez.
Oh, I know. I was waiting for you to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I expected that you would at the outset. Yes, Michael Vasquez, who also is probably positioned to make a decision fairly soon about another challenge to Richard Hanna, member of Congress. How are you, especially given the results of the election? You know, Michael Vasquez, that the next congressional election is happening in 370 days. It'll be here before you know it. So do you take any encouragement from the way things went especially with the Senate race here in the southern tier? Does that give you more of an incentive to consider a run, or are you going to consider encouraging Claudia Tenney to run again? What do you think might happen in 2016?
I would say in 2016 that Representative Hanna will be challenged. That's no question. That's going to happen.
Okay. If he even chooses to seek re-election, and I know that's been the source of some speculation as well, if this might be his final term.
Which would leave the ultimate race up to me or Claudia. I would think that would be the best thing he could do. That's my personal opinion. But I do think that what we saw in the election yesterday are indicative of the fact that people are finally in New York State, we're seeing people try to go and take a new path rather than what we've seen for 50 years with this being the bluest of blue states. And what is the result? The mass exodus out of the country. You know, Chairman Cox has mentioned it. How many articles have been out about property taxes, crime, everything, no jobs. We need to change. And this is one of the first steps.
As someone who's been on this program several times, you've been in this studio a number of times talking about a range of issues. Can you, for the life of, maybe you heard this letter from Liz and Johnson Say, or email, about, I don't know why you think Mr. Akshar would be anxious to talk to you since all I did was badmouth him. I think overall, again, I'm biased, but I'll ask you, given the totality of the last 3 months, was I spending too much time bad-mouthing Fred Akshar?
You were trying to get him on the air.
Yes.
Which is important.
That's why I've had, look, Tom Libbis was on with debates in 2012 and 2014. He told me he enjoyed them. And Senator Libbis was on in good times and bad. And he told me, even after the interviews, in which some of the topicality was not necessarily out of the PR division of the senator's office, he still told me he liked the interviews and he liked the opportunity. I'm not bad-mouthing anyone. Hey, I've said before, everybody is free to choose if they come on the program. This, as you know, Michael Vasquez, this is a unique soapbox for other people who don't have access to a radio station to express their views. I'm a facilitator. I encourage all candidates to come on, and then after they're successful at gaining office, coming on routinely to answer questions. And unlike what Ben Carson suggests of the media, this is not a gotcha program. I think all the questions asked are legitimate. And I don't think anybody who's ever come on the program has encountered a surprise question.
No, and I would say, some would say I'm biased because I've been on the show before. But I would say, when I was running For Congress, you were very fair. You gave me absolutely hard questions and legitimate questions. Every time we've spoken, you've given me hard and legitimate questions.
And then some people say sometimes, because most of the interviews are a mix. I mean, some are just relatively generic questions that are easy, and people say, oh, sometimes there are too many softball questions. Hey, you get a mix. You know, everybody thinks that every interview on this program ought to be some sort of Bill O'Reilly smash head thing, and that's not how it works. And in that case, you could certainly understand why A, people wouldn't want to come on in the first place, or B, why they'd never want to return. I mean, you have to strike enough of a balance where at least the questions, although they may not always be the most pleasant, are relatively balanced and relatively fair, so people will at least consider coming back on. So you strike that balance, and knowing full well that at any given time, probably at least 50% of the audience is thinking, I would do it differently. Well, of course they would.
Well, of course, that's a very different thing rather than being live, having
right.
been there.
Well, and you know, and we've covered it with just last hour with Barbara Fiala. You know, the questions aren't set up in advance, and, you know, we might beforehand, either by email or maybe by phone or even in the studio, say, you know, there's some things we'll probably talk about, but nobody who's a guest on the show gets the questions in advance. But still, in the end, I think the public is served. And, you know, you know, from listening to the program over the last few years, you know, there are some people who will never come on the program. And it's interesting. So, you know, you've got, say, Governor Cuomo, who doesn't want to come on the program, despite agreeing 2 years ago, actually 2 years ago this week, to come on the program. Governor Cuomo, of course, won't come on the program. Why? Well, because he doesn't want to answer the questions that are on the minds of people in the southern tier. And Michael, you know that Governor Cuomo has no better friend in Broome County now than me. Well, I mean, except Tom Libbis still lives in Broome County. Tom Libbis still likes... But Tom Libbis now is no longer a member of the Senate. Tom Libbis still is probably Andrew Cuomo's best friend in the southern tier. But then other than Tom Libbis, I'm his best friend, except he doesn't want to come on the program because he knows his best friend might ask him a couple of tough questions and ask him just to explain certain positions. But it's not personal, and it's not meant to be mean.
Well, no, of course not. And I have to say, I can't speak for Senator Akshar at this point, but I believe he's already first day on the job. A lot of people don't realize the moment he was sworn in last night, he became our state senator, and he's stepping in immediately. This isn't a delay. He's actually on the job now. So first day or two, he's doing catch up to where we are in the state senate and issues that are affecting us.
Well, and as we heard from Mayor David, I think Mayor David said he met with Senator Akshar already this morning for about 45 minutes. So it's understandable. He's busy and on a list of things to do. Doing a radio interview may not be necessarily in the top 10 or 20 or 30 things, but hopefully
he'll be there soon.
Well, I hope so, and I hope routinely that he'll come on, because I always viewed the fairly regular, not as often as I would have liked, but still fairly regular segments we did with Senator Thomas Libbis. I always thought that the people in the district were well served, and I thought it gave Senator Libbis essentially an unfettered forum to speak without strict time limits and without any censorship or editing.
I think you're going to see that he will take that advantage. From my conversations with him, and this is my personal opinion, I believe he is strongly looking to make sure he's looking out for people and making sure that he is in touch with everyone, which we don't see in a lot of politicians. You know, some of the ones you've heard who I believe that about, but I believe he's different in that. I think he's going to be someone who's very responsive, and to be responsive, that means he's going to show up.
All right. Well, I look forward to it, and I trust. Here's my belief that when he is here, I think he'll come away saying, actually, that was pretty good. And you know, obviously, as a senator, he'll be busy, but I am hopeful that on a, whether it's once a month or however often, that he's able to check in and keep the people of the district posted with what he's up to.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's going to absolutely happen. I think you're going to see a lot of activity now that we have the virtual clean sweep throughout Marin County and throughout the 52nd Senate District. Looking forward, we're going to see a lot of activity, and I think you're going to see a lot of people on the show, and I think people are going to be very happy as they listen to this.
Yeah,
and
well, I mean, and as I've said, all voices are welcome. You know, that's well, exactly, and I think that makes the process all the better. Michael Vasquez, thank you, and we'll keep in touch. I know you'll be back on the program. It's 11:57.